You know that feeling? The one that sits somewhere between your ribs and your throat. It doesn't scream. It doesn't have to. It just sits there, a low hum beneath everything else. You get home. You close the door. You've done what you were supposed to do. The tasks are checked off, the obligations met, and the version of you that everyone else needs has been presented, performed, and packed away. And now there's this, a handful of hours before you have to do it all again. And you look at them, those hours, and something in you expects them to feel like relief. But they don't. They feel like a question you're too tired to answer. What do you do with them? What do you do with yourself? Maybe you scroll. You tell yourself it's just for a minute, just to unwind, just to let the static of the day settle. But minutes become a pile. You look up, and the light outside has shifted, and you spend another evening watching other people live, or argue, or assemble furniture you don't own. Or maybe you pour something, just to take the edge off, just to soften the corners of the day that still feel sharp. Or maybe you just sit, staring at the same four walls, the same list of things you should do, the same awareness that another day has passed, and you are somehow both exhausted and untouched. That's the part that gets you. The untouched part. You did things, you were busy, you handled things, but when you stop, when the noise of motion fades, you realize you didn't move. Not really. You stayed in the same spot, the same patterns, the same invisible fence that keeps you right where you've always been. And you tell yourself it's fine. It's just life. It's just what happens when you're an adult with responsibilities. You tell yourself that everyone feels this way, that this is the trade-off. You give your days to survive so you can have your nights to recover, so you can do it again tomorrow. But that math never adds up to anything more. It adds up to maintenance. It adds up to staying in place while time moves past you. And the quiet truth, the one you don't say out loud, is that you're starting to feel the edges of it, the sense that years are going to pass like this, that you'll look up one day and the things you wanted to do, the version of yourself you thought you'd become, will have been eaten up by all those small decisions you made in the margins. The decision to scroll instead of start, to rest instead of risk, to keep the peace instead of building something that matters to you. This isn't about guilt. Guilt is useless. Guilt is the thing that keeps you stuck because it makes you believe you've already failed. So why try now? This isn't about that. This is about noticing that you have a life right now in these hours that don't belong to anyone else. And noticing that you've been treating them like a waiting room, like the real thing hasn't started yet. Like one day, when things settle down, when you have more energy, when the conditions are right, you'll finally use that time for something that feels like yours. But here's what you already know, even if you don't want to admit it. The conditions are never going to be perfect. The energy isn't going to arrive on its own. And waiting for everything to be easy before you start is just another way of deciding not to start at all. So let's sit with that for a second. Not in a harsh way, not in a way that adds another weight to your chest, just in a way that lets the truth land. You have time, not all the time, not an open field of endless possibility, but you have a slice, an hour, maybe less, maybe a little more. But you have a pocket of time that right now is being spent on things you won't remember next week, things that don't move you forward, things that don't change anything. And that's not a moral failure. It's just a pattern. And patterns can be rewritten. The problem isn't that you don't care. The problem isn't that you're lazy or undisciplined or lacking ambition. The problem is that the way you've been taught to think about time and change is broken. You've been sold this idea that transformation is a grand event, a dramatic before and after, a montage where you suddenly wake up at 5 in the morning, Run 6 miles, start a business, and become a completely different person in 30 days. And because that's not how your life works, because you can't find the starting line for that kind of overhaul, you don't start at all. You wait for the big moment, the right alignment of motivation and circumstance. And because that moment never comes, you stay exactly where you are. But change doesn't work like that. It never has. Real change happens in the small, unglamorous spaces that no one films. It happens in the single hour you decide to use differently. Not perfectly, not heroically, just differently. And then the next day you do it again. Not because you feel like it, but because you decided that hour is yours. And the day after that. And slowly, without you even noticing at first, that hour starts to build something. Not a transformed life overnight, something better, a foundation. Most people think an hour isn't enough. They think if they can't give 4 hours, if they can't go all in, then it's not worth starting. But that's exactly the thinking that keeps them stuck. Because an hour is enough. It's more than enough. An hour a day is 365 hours a year. That's 9 40-hour work weeks. That's a full quarter of a year's worth of work, done in the margins, done in the time you're currently spending on things you won't remember. And if you can't see what you could build with 365 hours of focused attention, you're not thinking clearly. You're thinking like someone who's been convinced that only big gestures count. But let's get specific, because vague hope doesn't change anything. Let's talk about what that hour actually looks like, and let's be honest about why you haven't taken it yet. The first reason is energy. After everything, after the demands and the decisions and the emotional labor of just getting through the day, you're depleted, and the thought of using your last reserves for something that feels like work, even if it's work for yourself, feels like asking too much. You tell yourself you'll do it tomorrow, when you're fresher, but tomorrow arrives with its own demands and you're depleted again, and the cycle continues. The second reason is fear, not the obvious kind, not the trembling, heart-racing kind. The quiet kind, the kind that whispers, what if you try and it doesn't work? What if you use that hour, day after day, and nothing comes of it? What if you put yourself out there? Build something, create something, and no one cares? What if you're not as capable as you hoped? The fear isn't of failure, it's of confirmation that maybe you don't have what it takes, so it's safer to scroll, safer to stay in the waiting room. Because if you never really try, you never really find out. The third reason is more subtle. It's the belief that your time isn't really yours, that somewhere along the way you signed an invisible contract that said your free time is for recovery, for decompression, for being available to others. That taking an hour and using it for something intentional, something that moves your life forward, feels almost selfish, like you're stealing from the people who need you or from the version of you that needs to rest. But here's the question you have to ask yourself. If you don't take that hour, who gets it? Who benefits from you scrolling or numbing or waiting? Not you, not the people who love you, not the future you. The hour just disappears. It dissolves into nothing. And you're left with the same life, the same frustration, the same quiet ache of not moving. So let's reframe it. Not as a discipline, not as hustle, not as one more thing you should do. Let's reframe it as a choice, a simple, daily choice to take back something that's already yours. An hour, just one, and let's strip away the pressure of what that hour has to accomplish. Because the moment you put become successful, or change my life, or build a new career on that hour, it collapses under the weight. You can't do that in an hour. But you can do something. You can start. Starting is the only thing that matters. Not finishing, not perfecting, not even making progress in a straight line. Just starting. Just showing up for that hour and doing something that belongs to you. Something that feels like movement, no matter how small. Think about what that could look like. Not what you think you should do, not what would impress someone else. What would you actually want to spend that hour on if you gave yourself permission? Not permission to be great, just permission to be interested, to be curious, to see what happens when you put your attention on something that matters to you. Maybe it's writing. Not a book, not a masterpiece, just words, pages that are only for you. Maybe it's learning something, a skill you've always been curious about, a language, an instrument, a craft. Not to be good at it, just to see what it feels like to grow. Maybe it's building something, a side project, a small business, a thing that exists in the world because you made it. Not because it has to be huge, just because it's yours. Maybe it's your body. Not punishing workouts, just movement that makes you feel alive. Stronger, more present in yourself. Maybe it's connecting, real connection. Not the shallow version that lives in comments and likes, but reaching out to someone who matters. Having a real conversation. Building something that lasts. The specifics don't matter as much as the fact that you choose, that you stop waiting for the big moment and claim the small one, that you take an hour that was disappearing anyway, and you use it to move your life in a direction you actually want to go. And here's the part that might surprise you. Once you start, the energy thing shifts, not because you suddenly have more hours in the day, but because using your time intentionally creates energy. It's counterintuitive. You think spending your last bit of energy on something demanding will leave you more depleted, and at first it might. The first week you'll feel it. Your brain will resist. It will tell you you're too tired, you deserve to rest, you can start tomorrow. But if you push through that resistance, something changes. Using your time in a way that aligns with who you want to be doesn't drain you. It fills you. It creates momentum. It gives you something to look forward to. And that anticipation, that sense of purpose, actually gives you more energy for the rest of your life, not less. Think about the difference. You finish your obligations, you sit down, you scroll for 2 hours. At the end, you feel hollow. You consumed, but you haven't created. You've watched, but you haven't lived. You filled the time, but you haven't used it. Now imagine you finish your obligations. You take 1 hour, you sit down to write or practice or build or move. You struggle. You feel clumsy. You're not good at it. But you did it. At the end of that hour, you have something. A page, a skill improved by a fraction. A small step forward. You go to bed feeling different. Not exhausted in the same way. Tired, but with a sense that today you didn't just survive, you built. That difference compounds. Day after day, that feeling builds on itself. And eventually, you stop thinking of that hour as a sacrifice. You stop thinking of it as something you have to force yourself to do. It becomes the part of your day you actually look forward to. The part that's just for you. The part where you're not performing for anyone, not meeting anyone's expectations, not trying to be anyone other than the person you're becoming. But let's be honest about what it takes to get there. Because the first weeks are hard. Your habits are entrenched. Your brain has pathways that lead straight to the couch, the phone, the bottle, the familiar numbness. And those pathways don't disappear overnight. They're well-worn, comfortable, safe, and every time you try to carve a new path, your brain will resist. It will tell you this is uncomfortable. It will tell you it's not working. It will tell you you're wasting your time. It will offer you 100 reasons to go back to the old way. And this is where most people stop. They hit that resistance, and they think it means they've chosen the wrong thing, or they don't have what it takes, or it's not meant to be. But the resistance isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something new. And anything new, anything worth building, is going to meet resistance. So you have to decide ahead of time. Before the resistance hits, you have to decide that you're going to show up for that hour regardless of how you feel. Not because you're disciplined in some abstract sense, because you've made a deal with yourself. And you're the kind of person who keeps deals with yourself. This is where most people's self-esteem gets quietly eroded. They make promises to themselves and they break them. They say they'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and they don't. They say they'll do it this time. This time they don't. And every time they break that promise, a small piece of their belief in themselves chips away. Not dramatically. Just a little, but over the years, those chips add up to a sense that you can't trust yourself, that your intentions don't matter, that you're not the kind of person who follows through. And that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why would you start something if you already know you won't finish? Why would you commit if you already know you'll quit? So the first thing that hour does, even before it builds anything external, is it starts to rebuild your relationship with yourself. Every day you show up, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it, you prove to yourself that you're someone who keeps promises. You're someone who does what they say they're going to do. And that belief, that quiet confidence, changes everything. It changes how you approach challenges. It changes how you approach challenges. It changes what you believe is possible for your life. And that's the real shift. Not that you become a master at whatever you're practicing in that hour. Not that you build something that makes you rich or famous. But that you become someone who acts, someone who moves toward what they want instead of waiting for it to arrive. Someone who doesn't hand the direction of their life over to circumstance, to exhaustion, to the endless scroll. That shift is everything. Because once you become someone who acts, you stop being a passenger in your own life. You start being the one who decides, not in a controlling, rigid way, in a way that feels like coming home to yourself, in a way that feels like remembering who you were before the world told you to be smaller, to be safer, to be satisfied with less. You start to see the patterns. The way you've been spending your free time isn't just about rest, it's about escape. And escape is different from rest. Rest renews you. It leaves you feeling more like yourself. Escape just removes you from yourself for a while. It's a way of not feeling the frustration, the boredom, the quiet ache of a life that's not fully yours. But escape doesn't solve anything. It just postpones. And eventually the ache comes back, often stronger because you spent another day not addressing it. So that hour, the one you're going to reclaim, it's not just about building something. It's also about being present with yourself. It's about sitting in the discomfort of not knowing how to do something, of being a beginner, of failing, of starting again. And that discomfort is actually where the growth happens. It's where you build the muscle that lets you tolerate uncertainty, tolerate frustration, tolerate the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that muscle, more than any specific skill, is what will change your life. Because life is full of discomfort, full of things not going the way you planned, full of moments where you have to choose between what's easy and what matters. And if you haven't practiced choosing what matters in the small moments, in the small hour that no one else sees, you won't be able to choose it when the stakes are high. But if you build that practice day after day, you become someone who chooses what matters, not because it's easy, but because you know who you are, and you know what you're building toward. Let's talk about what you're building toward, because that matters. It's not just about filling an hour. It's about giving that hour a direction. But here's the trick. The direction doesn't have to be perfectly clear. It doesn't have to be a 5-year plan with milestones and metrics. It just has to be a sense, a feeling, a pull towards something that feels more like you. Maybe you've lost touch with that feeling. Maybe you've spent so long being what other people need that you're not even sure what you want anymore. That's okay. That's more common than you think. The hour can be about rediscovering that, about trying things without pressure, about asking yourself, what do I actually enjoy? What do I lose track of time doing? What would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? Those questions aren't just exercises. They're the beginning of a conversation with yourself that you've been avoiding because you're afraid of what the answers might require of you. But here's what the answers require: an hour a day. That's it. They don't require you to quit your job. They don't require you to abandon your responsibilities. They don't require you to become a different person overnight. They just require that you stop treating yourself like an afterthought, that you carve out a space where what you want matters actually. And this is where we have to talk about something uncomfortable. The people who will notice, the people who are used to having access to your time. When you start taking that hour, when you start protecting it, some people won't understand. They might question it. They might make you feel selfish. They might have needs that seem to press against your boundaries. And you have to decide in advance that it's okay, that protecting your time isn't selfish, that you can't pour from an empty cup is a cliché, but it's a cliché because it's true. The version of you that shows up for others after you spent an hour building something for yourself is a better version. More present, more elate. The hour isn't taking from them, it's giving them more of you. And if that feels hard to believe, try it. See what happens. Not in a confrontational way, just in a quiet, consistent way. You start taking your hour. You don't announce it. You don't make it a big deal. You just do it. And you notice. You notice how much of your time was actually being claimed by people who hadn't even asked, simply because you weren't using it for anything else. You notice how much of your availability was actually just a lack of intention. And you notice that when you start using your time intentionally, the people who matter adjust, and the people who don't, the ones who only want you when you're available for their purposes, they fall away. And that's not a loss. That's a gain. So you start. You pick your hour, and you make it non-negotiable. Not negotiable with yourself. Not negotiable with anyone else. It's yours, and you decide what happens in it. But here's a nuance that matters. Non-negotiable doesn't mean rigid. It doesn't mean you do the exact same thing every day regardless of circumstance. Life happens, things come up, you get sick, a crisis happens. Flexibility is part of sustainability. The non-negotiable part is that you show up for that hour, even if what you do in it looks different. Even if you just sit and stare at the wall because you're too exhausted to do anything else. Even if you spend it thinking about what you want to do when you have more energy. The showing up is what matters. The consistency of intention. The daily reminder to yourself that you matter. And that consistency builds something powerful. It builds trust. Trust in yourself. And trust in the process. Because you start to see that small actions repeated over time produce results that feel almost miraculous, not because they're magical, because they're cumulative. A page a day is a book in a year. A skill practiced for an hour a day for a year makes you better than 99% of people who only think about it. A business built an hour at a time becomes something real. A body moved daily becomes strong. A mind exercised daily becomes sharp. And all of it happens in the margins, in the spaces no one else was using anyway. But you have to start. You have to stop waiting for the conditions to be perfect. They never will be. You have to stop waiting for motivation to strike. It won't. Motivation is a product of action, not a prerequisite. You act, and motivation follows. You start moving, and the energy to keep moving appears. But you have to start. You have to take that first imperfect, uncomfortable, uncertain step. And here's the thing about that step. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to be yours. It just has to be a decision that today, in this 1 hour, you're going to do something that moves your life in the direction you want it to go. Not because you have to, not because you should, because you want to. Because you're tired of waking up in the same place. Because you're tired of feeling like your days belong to everyone else. Because you want to know what happens when you actually show up for yourself. Let's talk about what happens when you do. Because it's not just about the thing you're building, it's about who you become in the building. You become someone who doesn't wait. Someone who doesn't wait excuses. Someone who doesn't let the voice in your head that says you can't win. You become someone who trusts themselves. And that trust, that quiet, steady confidence, changes everything about how you move through the world. You start to see opportunities you missed before. Not because they weren't there. Because you weren't looking. You were too busy consuming, numbing, waiting. But now you're looking. Now you're paying attention. Now you're present in your own life. And presence changes things. It changes how you talk to people. It changes how you approach problems. It changes what you believe is possible. And the changes start to spill over. The hour you spend writing makes you clearer in your emails, your conversations, your thinking. The hour you spend learning makes you curious in meetings, more engaged with the world. The hour you spend moving makes you stronger, more resilient, more comfortable in your skin. The hour you spend building makes you believe that you can create things, that you have agency, that your actions matter. And that belief, once it takes root, is unstoppable. But you have to protect it, because the world will try to take it. The old habits will try to pull you back. The voice that says it's not enough, you're not enough, will get louder when you start to move. That voice is scared. It's scared because you're changing. And change threatens the patterns it's used to. So it will throw everything at you: doubt, fear, procrastination, the sudden urgent need to clean the garage, anything to keep you from sitting down for that hour. And you have to recognize that voice for what it is. Not wisdom, not common sense, just fear dressed up in sensible clothes. So you sit down anyway. You pick up the pen, the tool, the book, the whatever, and you start even if it's bad. Even if it feels pointless, even if you have no idea what you're doing, you start, and you keep starting, day after day, because starting is the win. Starting is the rebellion against the part of you that wants to stay small. Starting is the declaration that you're still here, still trying, still becoming. And here's what you'll notice after a while. The starting gets easier. The resistance doesn't go away, but it gets quieter, because your brain starts to recognize the pattern. You show up, you do the thing. It's not a negotiation anymore. It's just what happens. And once it's just what happens, once it's a part of your day like brushing your teeth, the energy you spent on resisting gets freed up. You stop spending energy convincing yourself to do it. You just do it. And that energy goes into the thing itself. And the thing gets better. And you get better, and the whole process starts to feed itself. This is the flywheel. Slow at first, heavy, hard to turn. Every push feels like it's doing nothing, but you keep pushing, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the wheel starts to move. And then it moves a little faster, and then it gains momentum. And then one day, it's spinning on its own, and you realize you're not pushing anymore. You're being carried, not by luck, not by talent, by the accumulation of all those hours, all those days you showed up when it was hard, all those small, unglamorous choices that no one saw. They built something, not overnight, but they built it. And that thing you build, whether it's a skill, a project, a business, a stronger body, a clearer mind, it's yours. No one can take it from you. It's proof that you didn't just let the hours pass. You used them. You made them count. And that proof, that evidence of your own agency, changes the story you tell yourself about who you are. You're not the person who always meant to. You're the person who did. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but you did. And that difference between the person who means to and the person who does is the difference between a life that passes you by and a life you actually live. So let's get practical. Because intention is good, but structure is what makes it real. You have to decide when that hour is, not vaguely. Not when I have time. You have to schedule it. Put it in your calendar if you have to. Treat it like a meeting with the most important person in your life, because that's exactly what it is. And you have to protect that time. Shut the door. Turn off the phone. Tell the people who need to know that you're unavailable, not apologetically, not asking permission, just stating a fact. This hour is mine. And then you have to decide what you're doing in that hour. But here's where most people sabotage themselves. They pick something too big. They decide they're going to write a novel, learn a new language from scratch, start a business that will replace their income, and they put that pressure on an hour. And then they sit down, overwhelmed, and they do nothing. Or they do it for 3 days and quit because it's too much. So pick something small. Something so small it feels almost ridiculous. Write for 10 minutes. Do one lesson. Make one phone call. Move your body for 10 minutes. The goal isn't to accomplish the big thing in the first week. The goal is to build the habit of showing up. Once the habit is solid, once the hour is locked in, you can expand what you do in it. But start small. Start so small you can't fail. Because success in the first weeks isn't the thing you build. Success is showing up. Success is protecting the hour. Success is proving to yourself that you can do this. And once you've proven that, once you've got 30 days of showing up, you'll notice something. You'll want to do more. Not because you have to, because you've started to see the potential. You've started to see what happens when you put your attention on something consistently. And that desire, that pull to do more, is natural. Let it come, let it grow. But don't let it push you into overcommitment. The hour is the container. It's sustainable. It's something you can do on a hard day, on a tired day, on a day when everything else is chaos. Protect the container. Don't let the desire to do more destroy the habit that makes it possible. Because here's the truth about sustainable change. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. A person who runs a mile every day for a year is in better shape than someone who runs 10 miles once and then quits. A person who writes a page every day for a year has a book. A person who learns one new thing every day for a year is an expert. Intensity is flashy. Consistency is what actually works, and consistency is built on small, sustainable actions, not heroics. So let go of the heroics. Let go of the idea that you have to do something impressive to make it count. Let go of the need to see immediate results. That's the trap. That's what keeps you starting and stopping. You want to see proof that it's working before you've put in the work. But that's not how it works. The proof comes after, long after you've shown up 100 times. after you've pushed through the resistance 100 times, after you've built the habit so deeply that not doing it feels strange, that's when you look back and see the change, not before. So you have to operate on faith for a while. Faith that the small actions matter. Faith that the hour adds up. Faith that you're not wasting your time. And that faith isn't blind. It's based on evidence. The evidence of everyone who ever built anything meaningful. They didn't do it in big leaps. They did it in small, consistent steps, day after day. When they felt like it, when they didn't, when it was working, when it wasn't. They just kept showing up. And eventually, the showing up became something. You can do that. You already have everything you need. Not more discipline, not more willpower, not a different personality. You have an hour. You have a desire for something more. That's enough. That's more than enough. The rest is just showing up. And here's what you'll find when you do. You'll find that the hour gives you something back, not just the thing you're building, but a sense of yourself, a sense of direction, a sense that you're not just reacting to life, you're creating it. And that feeling, that sense of agency, is the foundation of everything else. It's the foundation of confidence, of resilience, of the ability to handle the hard things that life inevitably throws at you. Because when you know you can show up for yourself, when you've proven it to yourself 100 times, you know you can show up for anything. You know you have the capacity to choose, to act, to persist. And that knowledge changes the way you face challenges. You stop seeing them as obstacles that might defeat you. You start seeing them as problems you can work on, an hour at a time, because that's the framework. Everything, anything can be approached an hour at a time. A difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Spend an hour preparing. An overwhelming project at work. Spend an hour breaking it down. A relationship that needs attention. Spend an hour being fully present. A dream you've been putting off. Spend an hour taking the first step. The hour is the unit. It's manageable. It's human-sized. It's something you can do without rearranging your entire life. And once you start applying that framework, you realize that nothing is as overwhelming as it seemed. The mountain is just a collection of hours. The impossible is just a series of small steps, and you can take a small step. You can take one today, right now, in the hour you decide is yours. So let's address the question that might be sitting in your mind. What if I fail? What if I start and I stop? What if I prove to myself again that I can't follow through? That's a fair question, and the answer is important. You might fail. You might start and stop. You might have weeks where you show up and weeks where you don't. That doesn't mean the whole thing is broken. It means you're human. And the way you handle that, the way you handle the stops, is what actually determines whether you build something or not. The people who succeed aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail and start again, who miss a week and come back, who have a bad month and don't let it become a bad year, who don't let a temporary setback become a permanent story about who they are. So if you miss a day, you miss 2 days, you miss a week, you don't decide you failed. You just start again. The next day, the next hour. You show up, because the only real failure is deciding to stop trying. Everything else is just part of the process. And that process, the starting and stopping and starting again, it teaches you something. It teaches you that you're not defined by your slips. You're defined by your returns, by your decision to keep going even when it's not perfect, by your commitment to yourself that survives the hard days. And that, more than any streak of perfect consistency, is what builds real strength. So take the pressure off. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to never miss. You just have to keep coming back. Keep showing up for that hour. Keep protecting it. Keep using it for something that matters to you. And over time, over months, over years, that hour will become the foundation of a life you actually recognize as yours, not someone else's life. Not the life you settled for because you were too tired to choose. Yours. Built by your hands, 1 hour at a time. And that building, that act of creation, will change you. It will change how you see yourself. It will change what you believe you're capable of. It will change the story you tell when someone asks you what you do with your time. Because right now maybe that story is vague. You do your job. You take care of your responsibilities. You fill the hours. But when you have that hour, when you're using it intentionally, the story gets specific. You're writing, you're learning, you're building, you're moving, you're becoming. And that specificity, that clarity, is magnetic. It attracts opportunities. It attracts people who are doing the same. It attracts a version of your life that feels more aligned with who you actually are. And that's the real reward. Not the thing you build, though that might be wonderful. The reward is the person you become while building it. Someone who acts. Someone who chooses. Someone who doesn't wait for the perfect conditions. Someone who knows that their time is valuable because they use it like it is. Someone who, when they look back on this period of their life, doesn't see a blur of scrolling and waiting. They see movement. They see growth. They see the moment they decided that an hour a day was enough to change everything. Because it is. It really is. An hour a day is 365 hours a year. 365 hours of your attention, your intention, your effort. That's not nothing. That's not a small thing. That's a life. That's a life that you're actively shaping instead of passively receiving. That's a life where you're the author, not just the reader. And that shift from reader to author is everything. So here's the question. Not what will you do with your hour, but who will you be when you do it? Will you be the person who starts and stops, who lets the resistance win, who waits for motivation that never comes? Or will you be the person who shows up, who keeps the promise to yourself, who builds something day by day that you can stand back and look at with pride? Not because it's perfect, because it's yours, because you made it, because you chose to use your time instead of letting it use you. That choice is yours, right now. Not tomorrow, not when you have more energy, not when things settle down. Right now, in the hour you have today, the hour that's sitting in front of you waiting to be used or wasted. You know what you usually do with it. You know the pattern. And you know somewhere deep down that the pattern isn't working. It's not leading anywhere you want to go. So why not try something different? Just for today. Just for 1 hour. Do something that moves you toward the person you want to be. Not because you have to, because you want to see what happens. Because you're curious. Because you're tired of waiting. Because you're ready to find out what you're capable of when you actually give yourself a chance. And after that hour, you can decide about tomorrow. But today, you have this one. This 1 hour. And what you do with it matters, not because it will change your life overnight, but because it's a vote for who you want to be. And you get to cast that vote. Right now, with this hour, with this choice, with this small, unglamorous, entirely possible act of showing up for yourself. So go ahead, take it, take the hour, take back something that was always yours, and see what happens, see what you become, see what you build. Not because you have to prove anything to anyone, because you deserve to know. You deserve to know what your life looks like when you're the one steering it, when you're the one deciding, when you're the one showing up, day after day, for the person who matters most. That's the hour. That's the fix. Not a fix for something broken. A fix for the drift. A fix for the waiting. a fix for the feeling that your life is happening to you instead of through you. And it's not complicated. It's not easy, but it's simple. 1 hour, one choice, one day, and then another, and another, until the days become weeks, and the weeks become months, and you look back and realize that nothing is the same. Not because you did something dramatic, because you did something consistent, because you did the small thing over and over until it became something large, something real, something that belongs to you. And when you get there, when you feel the weight of what you've built, you'll understand something that no one can tell you. You'll understand that the hour was never the problem. The problem was believing it wasn't enough. The problem was waiting for more. The problem was handing your time to things that gave nothing back. But you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wonder what would happen if you tried. You can just try. You can just start. You can just start. You can just take the hour that's already yours and use it for something that matters. So do that. Start there, not with a plan for the rest of your life, with a plan for today, for this hour, for the thing you've been putting off, for the thing you've been afraid to try, for the thing that, if you're honest with yourself, you've been wanting to do for a long time. Do that, just for an hour. See what happens. See how it feels to be in motion, to be creating instead of consuming, to be choosing instead of drifting. And when the hour is over, notice how you feel. Notice the difference between this and the usual way you spend your time. Notice the small spark of something that feels like possibility. That's the thing. That's what you've been missing. Not the finished product, not the success, the process, the becoming, the daily act of showing up for yourself. That's the fix. That's the change. That's the life you get to live when you decide that nothing is changing until you change it and that you can change it, 1 hour at a time. So go. Take the hour, not because you should, because you can, because you want to, because the person you're becoming is waiting for you to start. And that person, the one who acts, the one who builds, the one who doesn't wait for permission, that person is already in you. They're just waiting for you to give them the time. So give it. Give them the hour. Give yourself the hour, and see what happens. You might be surprised, not by how much you accomplish in that single hour, but by what happens when you decide that your time matters, when you decide that you matter, when you stop letting the hours slip away and start using them to build something that's truly yours. That's the shift. That's the moment. That's the choice that changes everything. And you can make it right now. With the hour in front of you, with the decision to do something different, with the simple, powerful act of taking your time back. Because it is yours. It always was. You just forgot. You got busy. You got tired. You got convinced that your time belonged to everyone else. But it doesn't. It belongs to you. And what you do with it is up to you. So do something. Do the thing you've been putting off. Do the thing that scares you a little. Do the thing that feels like stepping into who you're meant to be. Not perfectly. Not with certainty. Just with the willingness to start. And let that start be enough. Let the hour be enough. Because it is. It's more than enough. It's everything. It's the difference between a life that happens to you and a life you create. And you get to choose today, right now, in this hour. So choose. Choose to start. Choose to show up. Choose to take back what's always been yours. And see what happens when you do. You might just find that nothing is the same, that everything is changing, that the life you wanted was waiting for you all along, in the hours you thought were too small to matter. But they matter. They matter more than you know. And now you know, so go. Take the hour and start living like it matters, because it does. You do, and this is where it begins, right here, right now, with this hour, with this choice, with you.